Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. This time I'd like to talk to you about some of the different types of prejudice that we see out there in America. And in particular, this list isn't really just in America, it is around the world in different amounts and different types, just depending. So let's just take a brief look at this. First is sexism. And really, we're talking about women in all countries who have fewer rights and advantages than men do. It certainly is a man's world. There aren't any governments in the world completely controlled by women and so forth. And there is a certain amount of sexism and so forth in many institutions and in all cultures around the world. And in fact, so women end up as a minority, as players in almost all political and economic arenas. So that is sexism. Um, we have racism, ethnicity problems. Um, Of course, race itself is a myth. There's only one race of humans. Ethnicity is a better term. Uh, but the usage of the term racism is so widespread, it's not going to change. So we still say racism when really we mean ethnic stereotypes. But certainly that's not so easy to say, is it? Um, but this notion is usually where we have a dominant group in any given culture and one or more subgroups of people who are not dominant. And then we see the power and advantage imbalances that creep in and really contribute to this notion of stereotypical thinking about groups of people. And then again, also, when we say someone is biracial, we're talking about the great majority of people. We're all bi-ethnic in some sense. It's just more visible. In Euro Americans, we're bi-ethnic. We all go to My Ancestry and all of that, and Ancestry.com, and we can find out where our ancestors come from and all of that. And sometimes we will look pretty much like they do over time, but in other cases, no. Our ethnicities are mixed up around the world just by random events, and most of the time we don't know those details. Um, so most of us are bi-ethnic, and we never even think about it in those terms. But people of color who are bi-ethnic certainly have to deal with it in most societies where they live, and they have to deal with ethnic stereotypes and so forth. And it's ingrained in particular in American culture, just like it is European or anywhere else you go. And almost everyone is using that term race. So you have an opportunity as an individual to educate people and use the term ethnicity whenever appropriate. Um, just remember, there is no genetically pure stock in the world anymore. Even in the most remote locations, groups of people are not completely pure in their DNA. They're still Homo sapiens and so forth. And Native Americans, this is true, African Americans, and so forth. Um, the next one on the list here, classism, is completely different. We're talking about those who have certain ideas. They may accept stereotypes about status differences, such as wealth or family name or place of birth, ancestry, those sorts of things. And it could be the wealthy versus the poor, things like that. So classism could be based on a lot of different factors. We see this all over the world, not just in America. Um, Lookism is one that you may not have heard about. This is a general term for appearance discrimination. And there's a lot of growing research in this area, and it covers all sorts of things. But generally, it's about how people treat other people and make snap judgments, in particular in America, about people when they don't know anything about them other than what they observe or see. And that is lookism. So it can be whether or not you're short or tall or skinny or fat or pretty, ugly, if you're obese, if you're disabled, and so forth. The lookism really deals with that sort of discrimination. And there is no doubt, as we'll talk about later in the course, that it affects people's careers, their pay level, a lot of factors in life and in the workplace. When it comes to disability, there are many of the stereotypes we're going to discuss in the class about disabled people. And the numbers of disabled people are incredibly huge. And it's on a continuum of disability, really, from little impairment to extremely impaired, unable to take care of yourself type of conditions. So there's a lot of talk about there, and prejudice and discrimination against disabled people, and even a little history to discuss of how we got to where we are today with our approach towards the disabled. Certainly, homophobia is fear and loathing of gay people. It's out there, it's prevalent, and this is where we might see some of the most prevalent and the worst, most meanest examples of discrimination that are out there are these against the gay community. And the gay community is very confusing, I would say, to many people. It's something they don't want to talk about, not deal with it. It may not impact their life, so they don't really engage with it in any way, the idea or the concepts. And many people would claim that they don't even know a gay person when probably that's not true. They just don't really know. So homophobia is out there, and certainly you know this. We'll talk about some of the facts about it that we can talk about and so forth. Ageism, certainly discrimination by virtue of your age. We had to pass a law, right, to protect people who are 40 years and older from being discriminated in employment. Of course, it really doesn't make everything like that go away, but it just shows you that we don't value age and wisdom in our culture as much as maybe some other cultures we could be compared to. There was a time in America when people who were older were venerated. They accumulated all the wealth and hung on to it. But as we became a more modern society, we have not needed those older people as much. And younger people are able to go out and pursue opportunity. And so life has changed. And there is a lot of age discrimination, ageism out there today. This also includes that area of generational cohort research that we often talk about when we talk about stereotypes and culture and so forth. Ageism includes all that information so that it's part of understanding each other. And one way to do that is through the generational perspective. Um, Obesity, certainly, this is an area not everybody feels very comfortable talking about. It includes a number of interesting topics besides just how did obese people get that way and so forth. There's so many stereotypes they're all negative. So we include talking about the perils of dieting and the cultural norms that many of us endure about our appearance and so forth. There's a lot of research to talk about the career effects of being obese and certainly the health effects. So there's a lot of discrimination, certainly, is acted out from prejudicial thinking about people's weight. And then the last topic on here, religious discrimination, prejudice. It's one of the oldest forms of discrimination out there. Um, there have been wars in all the histories that go as far back as people are able to see, and they often are wars about religion or related to it. Religion is rooted in strong emotion, um, and we can develop prejudice about virtually anything related to humans. It just so happens that religion is accompanied by so many very strong, powerful feelings and emotions that people have. So it makes it very powerful. And religion does play that role in the prejudice-prone personality, which is the most susceptible type to someone who holds a lot of stereotypical thinking and so forth about other groups of people. Um, so we can develop these prejudicial thoughts in any area of life. For instance, some typical ones are all politicians are crooked and self-serving, or all post office workers tend to go postal at some point. In other words, they flip out. All policemen are violent. Um, all motorcycle riders belong to gangs. Uh, our types of prejudice and thinking and the types of stereotypes we make just extend to every interaction that we have with people in life. Okay, folks, that's all I want to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.